to Church of Aliens for another episode. Hope you're all doing well. Um, Wanted to touch up on a bit of news that happened a few weeks ago regarding the UFO UAP hearings that happened in the United States. Um, it was a bit of a disappointing event, but there were some great things in it. For me, one of the really uh, important things was the mentioning by one of the senators of Admiral Wilson and the notes that were um, talked about for a long time in the UFO community, and even mentioning Eric Davis, his name publicly. I think it would be great if in the future, even Eric Davis could testify. I'm sure he would do it if he was granted immunity or something like that. It was just great to hear that coming out in the conversation, even though they denied it, that they heard anything about it. They did release some footage, pretty poorly done. So I was really surprised that they it was done through someone's phone. Um, I'm sure they have better HD images and videos than that. So it's kind of disappointing in that aspect. And yeah, they didn't really reveal much else, but it was at least getting the foot in the door to hopefully in the future for more people to testify and to give their accounts. Um, um, but yeah, that was quite an eventful couple of weeks, all about the hearings. So I'd like to hear what you guys thought about it in the comments below. Um, but on this episode, I want to talk about really what it is really is magic or psych phenomena. So I was reading a book by Dean Radin called Real Magic, and it was really interesting. Um, his thoughts and his years of study on psychic phenomena and how people can use it, some steps on producing some results, and the history behind it. And I recommend anyone who's interested in this area to read his book. I got it on Audible, which is quite good. Um, but it made me think of a recent interview that Lue Elizondo did on the Generation Z podcast. He was being interviewed and with Sean Cahill as well, and um, he was mentioning things about time, and he was asked generally about time, but he said this is a very um, deep conversation to have about what is time, and he used the analogy of the cigarette burning and the cherry of the cigarette, how uh, in a sense time is not linear, and that one part of the burning could perceive to be as forward and another one backward, but it's all burning at the same time. And he was relating it to how people um, who have developed talents or just naturally gifted in this area can perceive time differently, either back in time in the past or in the future, certain events, or just uh, anything in particular. They're able to perceive it, to see it, or to sense it somehow. Um, he did mention this is, in a way, how remote viewing, that's how we sort of talk about it, being able to perceive something in the future. Um, so some of those studies were mentioned in Dean Radin's book. And it was very fascinating to hear that interview, and even mentioning things where like they know some parts of the brain um, where this is developed inside the human brain. And it was mentioned also by Dr. Gary Nolan recently that there's just certain parts of the brain where these sort of talents and intuitions are developed. And I started to think how Even in my life, I've been able to perceive things that it could have been from the future, an event, and saw it in the present time, and it came true. And even things not in the past, I never sort of saw or felt anything in the past, but definitely things in the future of either premonitions or even dreams that they would then come true. Um, but I think uh, the language that is being used now in regards to remote viewing and perception in time is really valuable for people that have these types of experiences, or they're wanting to develop these abilities. To hear it from these people like Lue Elizondo and Gary Nolan, Dean Radin, because you're used to hearing it from people generally that are a bit wacky. They either don't have a lot of credentials or they're kind of a bit whimsical. Even in like my tradition in Christianity, I mean, the people that really talk about prophetic things, instead of using the word remote viewing or psychic phenomena, it's remote viewing, words of knowledge, um, the spirit of prophecy, uh, divine dreams, these type of things. Even the people who teach them, or or you hear about people who talk about this, they're a bit. How would I describe it? Like for me, they're a bit pie in the sky type of people. Like they're not very. They don't seem credible. It's like they seem a bit loopy, from my opinion. So people like, I don't know, Patricia King, and they just certain others. I don't know, certain others on TBN channel and things like that. That to me, just it could be true. I think it's that they're just talking about the same thing. They just have a different language and it's just marketed differently. Um, because I think in general in Christianity, it's quite a serious, um, it's quite a serious religion. Like the perception of the world and life is a very serious one. And to talk about these like prophetic and things like that, it's sort of like a bit on the edge, like a bit fringe. So the people, in a sense, are a bit. They look a bit like that, and the way they talk. But it's quite refreshing to hear, even in the new, like you hear about it in the new age, about prophetic and being able to see the future. It's usually, I don't know, the way it's marketed on the people that are talking about it are quite fringe in a way. Um, so it was great to see how just recently in the past year, and in the past as well, a bit further on, the language is changing and that's becoming mainstream. I think that's a really good change. Um, I mean, personally, for me, uh, everything has been very, in a sense, spiritualized. So the prophetic and anything like that would be, it's almost like there's nature and the average life and what can happen in your everyday life is something separate to what can happen in the supernatural or God's kingdom. And I think, for example, this type of book really makes it like it's part of nature. And I think how Lou Elizondo also says how even UAPs, and even Jim Semivan, he did an interview a couple of months ago on aliens and artists that was really good. He said, this is very much part of nature. He said, it may be a capital N, but it's definitely part of nature. And I think that's something that's missing definitely in Christianity, where even in Christianity, where there's people who oppose these types of supernatural things, they think it's just uh, bogus or even demonic. It's like they have a sphere around what they think is real. It's like the natural world and then the supernatural world. And how you attain that is really by just God either giving it to you, some spirit is coming down. Um, and it's not like very, how would I say, like pragmatic. or practical. It's just, just if you want to um, develop a discipline of learning how to perceive time differently or be able to see things in the future, they would say it's just like, you need to have a fear of the Lord, or um, like pray in tongues for a few hours, or things need to be passed on to you. So you need to go to a meeting where someone has this gift and then that's imparted onto you. Then you have it, how it was done in the Old Testament. So they have these types of ways of doing it. It's not just like they're not telling anyone can just do this and you need to do these things. It's a bit more, yeah, I don't know. It's a bit more, there's more gates to the destination. You have to do it through somebody, or you have to do this thing that's in the Bible, and then maybe God can grant this to you. And I like how, in a sense, these abilities, these psychic phenomena, is available to anyone because it's part of nature. It's not external, something out there that they're not going to have to communicate with this alien being or this spiritual being, and then that's granted to me. So I think that was pretty awesome to hear how things are changing. And what else? It was something also that he mentioned really interesting that uh, he's mentioned before as well. Lue Elizondo said in this interview that MK Ultra was used in the past to, in a sense, manipulate people, and it was done by by the government, certain people, even though that program was closed and they don't do that before. I highly doubt that. I mean, if you look at it, if a program like that was the purpose was to see how you could change someone's identity, like wipe it clean using drugs and other means, to then be able to manipulate them to do certain things or to believe certain things. And it was really successful. I doubt that they would just come off that and say, okay, we're not going to do anything with that anymore. I mean, I'm sure they would probably change how they do that. Maybe get volunteers, not, get just kidnap people or take people without their will, or warn people of what they're doing. Like they're changing your identity. They're not just, you know, you're not just getting a massage or something. Like it's changing who you are into something else, and you're not in control. I doubt the people who were really in that program in the beginning even were told that. Um, so it was really interesting for him to talk about that openly, because that's a huge part of even psychic phenomena, like who you think you are and what your potential is, what you're able to do in life. And it could be something really bad, like really evil, like changing your identity and your beliefs to do something horrible in the world, or to do something amazing. What if you could change your complete identity, like wipe your slate clean in your brain and your emotions to become somebody completely different with amazing potential and power? That's quite a dangerous thing to have in the world, um, because it's unpredictable. And I'm sure something similar to that program is still running now, um, because it was, highly successful. I doubt they just left it and said, "Well, we're not going to do anything with this anymore." Um, but even in the book, like Dean Radin said, you have to believe that this is possible. You can't just do this and think this is not going to work. People like that don't have any results. So you have to, in a sense, believe that something um, out of the ordinary can happen, and that you have this inside you, and it's natural. It just needs a lot of discipline, and in other people, it's you're just born with a certain talent. Um, but it was really interesting uh, to hear recently these sort of conversations happen. And also, I highly recommend the book by Dean Radin, Real Magic. It was really cool. And yeah, this is all I really wanted to talk about on this episode. I hope you really enjoyed it, and let me know in the comments below what you think. See you guys.